Hi everyone, I'm glad to be here with Product School discussing about building the payment experience for the customers coming on e-commerce platforms. And I hope you find this useful and hopefully you have something to take away and implement in your products. So let me quickly introduce myself. I have around 6 years of product management experience. I have worked on different products on payments, the CRM, that is building the post order experience for customers, on refunds, redressal, etc. And I have also spent around 5 years in travel industry, building the e-commerce funnel and understanding the growth domain for Redbus in Southeast Asian and Latin American markets. And currently, I work for Amazon Pay, taking care of the product side for external online merchants and based out of India. And so let's get started. So first thing, why is it important to build for payment experience, or why is it important to enhance this step of e-commerce funnel, that is the last leg before completing the order on your website or your app? So my biggest incentive in improving this particular step is that you got the customer so far till the last leg of the funnel. You have done everything right in terms of acquiring the customer. You got your marketing channels right. You have activated the customer. You got your life cycle management right. And at the end, you created that desire in the customer to come to your website, go through the home page, select the inventory, and at the end on payment page, you do not want to lose the customer because you have created that highest motivation, and this is the highest intention point of the customer. It's like that attention you don't want to lose. You don't want to fail there again, because some of the anecdotal data suggests that it's very difficult to regain the customer who fails on payment once, because it's the money which you're charging from the customer. And when it comes to money, all of us are little sensitive and finicky about it. We don't want to take a second chance there. So yeah, it's why do you want to lose the customer at this particular point? So why not is the question to be asked. Now moving on to some of the challenges which are faced by the customers. The biggest one is that the payment page itself needs to capture a lot of details from customers, and a lot of times, for example, for cards, if you see, there is a 16-digit number, there's a 20-digit number which needs to be entered by the customer precisely without making any mistakes. And in a lot of markets, in order to avoid frauds, there is a second factor authentication. There is a one-time password which is sent to the customer's device on the mobile, or there are a lot of times customer needs to enter a password to complete a payment, and that poses challenges for different kinds of customer segments. So the way a tech-savvy customer would react to this particular barrier would be very different from, let's say, a senior citizen who wants to make a payment. So depending on the customer type or the customer cohort which your business is targeting, you need to gauge upon what are the main problems you have to concentrate on. The second part of it is that payment itself is quite distributed. Not all businesses will have the licenses or the payment processing capabilities. You typically make integrations or partnerships with payment processors like a BillDesk or a PayU or PayPal, or a Stripe integration, which you must have heard, depending on the market in which you operate for. So in all these third-party integrations, because you are switching the customer from one channel to the other, there are chances of bad networks, or there are chances of the main payment page not loading faster, or that there could be infrastructures issues on the banks or the processors. Or the one prevalent thing these days is that a lot of businesses are going on mobile. Around 80% of transactions come from mobile payments, and not all bank pages are optimized for it. The mobile form factor is still a challenge for a lot of banks, particularly the long tail banks. they wouldn't be very comfortable in loading the payment page very promptly and seamlessly going through the transaction for the customer. Then since we are talking about the infrastructure here, the uptime or the availability of the processors is also quite critical. A lot of times if you have only one gateway, payment gateway is nothing but the processor I was talking about. Depending on one gateway would also jeopardize the experience, because in case of downtimes you don't have an alternative. Then the last part is payment being charged from the customer but order not confirmed. This is a really bad experience, because customer has trusted us and attempted a payment, and at the end you have charged the customer on the bank account, and because of all the processing issues which I just spoke about, it could be that there is a delay in receiving the success flag from the processor, and you couldn't confirm the transaction. And that becomes even more prominent for perishable inventory cases, where you hold the inventory for fixed number of minutes. For example, I have to select a seat on a bus, or I have to select a seat on a movie theater. I'm going to book a movie ticket. The inventory gets lost in few minutes. The seats get sold very faster. So it's important to confirm the payment and issue the order quite faster for the end customer. So these are some of the challenges which customers face in different markets. Coming to the payment ecosystem, we can divide it into three parts which we need to optimize on. One is the payment page and the challenges which I just spoke about, the selection of instruments, presenting the best discounts, cashbacks, and making sure that you capture the right details from the customer about the instrument through which they want to pay. Then the second part of it is the payment platform. So you typically build your own payment platform for your business, depending on your customer preferences, depending on your market. And as I said, you need to have multiple processes integrated, so that in case of downtimes, you make sure that there is a backup for business continuity. And you want to expedite, or you want to fasten the payment experience for the customer by saving the preferences, by saving any card details, or making sure that if customer is using a particular bank type or the card type repeatedly, you want to promote that on the page. Then the third part of it, which is important on payment platform, is monitoring of the metrics. If you really want to improve on certain metrics, what is that one what are those 1-2 numbers which you will track for improvement. And yeah, while we are talking about payment experience, it's also important to optimize on the refunds and the reconciliation part. So we will get into more details of payment platform later. And coming to the third part, which is the payment processing, which is the main core of the platform, main core of, in fact, the payment processing by external parties, be it banks or be it processors. It's important that you optimize on the experience as well as cost there. So let's understand these in a little more detail. So I was just talking about the metrics. If we want to improve on payment experience, how do I measure it? If I cannot measure it, I don't know how much I have to improve on, what kind of benchmarks I need to set. So we'll discuss about some of the metrics which are quite important to track here. So I would define a basic metric called payment success rates here, which is PSR, the short form which we will use in the presentation a lot. That would be defined as the number of successful payments by the customers divided upon the total number of attempts which the customers are making. So let's say 100 customers have come to my website, they reach till the payment page and they're attempting a payment. Out of them, if 80 customers are successfully able to get the order, I would call my PSR to be 80%. So that could be defined at multiple levels. You can define payment success rates at instruments. That is, what kind of instruments are giving me good PSR? Is my card success rate better than my wallets or my other options like net banking, so that I can promote them more on my payment page, and that would ensure that the customer is successful with more probability. Similarly, if I have multiple processors, I should track PSR at processor level so that I give majority of the attempts or the traffic towards the processors who have better PSRs. Then the third level could be the sub instruments. When I say sub instruments, in my cards I could have multiple banks of multiple banks which I would process. So let's say a Standard Chartered or a HDFC Bank gives me better success rates. I need to communicate, or I need to promote it in a way that it becomes easier for the customer to choose that kind of card, provided customers already have multiple cards with them. Then there are more dimensions which we can add here depending on the kind of business you are into. For example, if you have multiple channels through which you sell your product, you have a mobile app, you have a desktop application, you have a mobile browser presence, it's important to measure which one carries maximum traffic for you and optimize for that channel. Similarly, the operating systems, for example, in Indian market, Android occupies majority share for transactions, so it's important that we optimize for Android. Similarly, it could be that in US, for your product, iOS occupies majority share, so it's important to optimize for iOS transaction. And it also depends on the user type. A lot of times new users find it difficult to discover the product funnel and make a purchase, whereas if it is a repeat customer, you already save certain preferences, you already save the card details of the customers, and you make it a little more easy for that customer. And the other important thing is the product category which you are selling. It could be that if I'm selling, let's say, bus tickets for travel, the transactions which are happening in big cities, it could be that the PSRs are better there because the customers are more tech savvy, or it could be that the internet availability is better there, due to which the success rates are quite good. So these are some of the dimensions which I had tracked in my previous experiences. So you can choose what works out the best for your situation. So moving on, let's understand the checkout process. What are the different touch points we need to concentrate on? So a lot of wallets are prevalent in the market today, particularly in the emerging countries. We find that there are wallets like a PayPal or an Amazon Pay, or a Paytm in Indian market, so on and so forth. So they require a customer to log in into the wallet once there is an intention to pay. But if you think from customer's perspective, they have already logged into the mobile app of you where they actually want to buy the product. It's the second login that you're asking the customer to make into in order to complete the payment. So it's better you make this login experience as seamless as possible. A lot of wallets in the market or the payment gateways in the market, they come up with this account linking where once the login is done, the second time onwards when customer is coming up, you have a token assigned for that customer account, and customer doesn't necessarily log in every single time. So that's about login process. It's better we make it as simple as possible. We need to move away from email login, setting up password, etc. It's better you make it a phone number based or an OTP based login, which could be perceived much more easier. The payment processing part we spoke about, we will get into more details of it sooner. Then the third most important part is the confirmation of the order once the payment success is received. It's important that you reduce the number of hops between the payment gateway processor and your payment platform, because the more number of players or the more number of integrations hops you have, the more chances of that packet or the response getting dropped in the funnel. And at the end, it's a very bad experience if you are charging the customer on a particular transaction, the money is debited from customer's bank account and you're not able to confirm that order. And it becomes even more challenging in case of perishable inventory where there is fixed amount of time. For example, if I'm booking a movie ticket, the seat where I want to book that particular ticket for a movie, it could be lost in 5-6 minutes. Or if it's a seat in a bus I'm going to purchase, that could be lost in 10 minutes of time. So it's very important that the checkout process or the order confirmation process is quite optimized. Okay, so let's talk about building of this payment page. What are some of the recommendations or best practices over here? The first and the most important thing is that you cover a wide range of instruments which are available in the market. For example, if Amex or a Diners card, or if PayPal is very penetrated in the market, if it's quite known to the customers, you do not want to miss upon that particular payment option, because customer would drop away if they are habituated to it. Then the second important thing is that you save the customer's preferences to ease out the payment process. If there are card details already entered, you try to save that card, or if there is a particular card which is frequently used by the customer, you save that preference and promote it on top of the payment page so that it's easy for the customer to discover. Then the next important thing is that availability of the payment processors, or in case of any downtimes, you communicate it very proactively to the customer that hey, we are facing issues with Amex card, for example. There are some technical challenges. We recommend you to not use this card and use something else. So that is one good communication. And the next important thing is to make the payment page, keep it as lean as possible, because I've seen a lot of times that people clutter this page with a lot of promotions, offers, cashbacks which are running. I think we get super excited in terms of communicating or over communicating a lot of promotional stuff, and at the end lose out on the customer, because customer gets distracted figuring out the offer rather than completing the payment. So it's better we park this kind of exploration before the payment page, and not bringing these elements on the page before completing the order. And it's better to avoid any cross selling of products as well here. So a lot of time I've seen insurance products or the add-on products being sold on the payment page. So in my experience, I would recommend not to clutter the page much. Then the last and the most important thing out of all is highlighting the security on the payment page, because at the end, the customer is trusting us with money. So any kind of compliance or regulatory requirements which are there in the market, it's better there is enough adherence and enough highlight on the page, so that customer gets the customer's attention goes towards it, and there is enhancement in the intention to complete the payment. So yeah, this is about building of the payment page. Now moving to the second part of it, which is the payment platform itself, which is like the core of the entire processing unit which you build. So one important point is to integrate with more number of processors in the market, so that if there is downtime or if there are any performance issues, there are low success rates with one gateway, you can switch to the other. And if you want to make it more advanced, you can even build a dynamic switching without any manual intervention, that okay, this particular payment gateway is performing 5% lower to the other gateway, so can I switch to the other one based on cost? So that could be one decision point. Then the second is that if you are looking for saving of costs on the payment processors, I would recommend that you directly integrate with the banks there, instead of going through the processors and paying an additional cost to the processor, additional markup fee to the processor. But it depends on the size of business as well. If you are a startup, or if you are in the beginning of the growth curve, you may not want to invest a lot into integrating with the banks, and it may not save a lot of costs for you. Then the third important point here is making sure that the customer is maintained in the funnel of your app or your application where the order is being placed. We already spoke about a smooth sign-in flow on the wallets. That's one part. Second is you try to maintain customer preferences, or you try to store the safeguard details and make the entire payment process as much simpler as possible. That's one. The last one I want to touch upon is about the kind of integration you choose. It could be a hosted integration, or it could be a direct in-app experience. So we'll come to what's the difference between a hosted integration and an in-app payment page experience. So if you see the screen on my left side, that's a music academy which runs online classes. So they go for a hosted integration, which means once you click on pay button on the website, it lands on the small pop-up page which is owned by the payment processor. It's Razor Pay in Indian market. So this is called hosted. It's usually recommended for a startup or a growth level company in the beginning stages, because they may not have a lot of resources or a lot of engineering bandwidth to build the in-app experience. For example, on booking.com, if you go, you don't enter into a different page or a pop-up page of the payment processor, because it creates low trust that I'm booking on this website. Why am I suddenly going to a third party page? So for bigger players, higher transactions, it's recommended to have a inline direct integration with the processors rather than having a hosted page. But the hosted page comes with its own advantages, that you don't need to carry on a lot of maintenance activities, because on this page there is somebody who is maintaining this page for you. They are integrating with a lot of processes in the back end. They will whatever we spoke about the payment platform in the previous slides, they will take care of the entire work for you. So it's as good as outsourcing your payment processing to somebody else. So if you ask me, if you crossed let's say a few thousands of transactions already, it's better that you start thinking about the in-app payment experience. It could be leading to more development effort, more cost in terms of maintaining a team, but that definitely creates more trust and gives better experience to the end customer. So that's about hosted and in-app payment experience. So let's talk about the failed transactions. How can you address them better? So far we spoke about enhancing the payment success rates. How do you give the best experience? But let's say something goes wrong there. How do you target the customer again? So there are two kinds of payment failures which can happen. One is that the money is not debited from customer's account. It's a pure failure that happened. So in that case, you want to retarget the customer as soon as possible. You want the customer to remain in the funnel itself, and you would want to show a retry button in the payment funnel. Or if the customer has abandoned from the page, you want to follow up very quickly with a SMS, text, or for example, WhatsApp is quite popular in a lot of markets, and the open rates and click rates for WhatsApp links are quite good. So you might want to follow up the customer with a WhatsApp link that, hey, why don't you come back and try again with the payment? And you might want to sweeten the price this time, saying that you can use this offer code and try the payment again. But what is quite recommended is that you try to capture the customer in the payment funnel itself, instead of chasing them when the customer abandons. Then the second type of failure which happens is that money is already charged from customer's bank account, but our payment platform could not get the response there. So this is a very bad experience for the customer. You not only lose that transaction, but you lose customers' trust, and all the new user acquisition cost. You might lose it, because not many customers come back when this kind of experience is presented. So in order to avoid this, it's important that you maintain a very tight integration with the payment processor and the banks. And a lot of times this is it surely happens because the latest payment status is not communicated to the payment platform. So it's important to keep polling to the bank or the processor to get the latest payment status, so that you can at least process the refund for the customer, because not in every case can you confirm the inventory or can you confirm the order. So you can at least win the customers trust by processing the refund on time. And even if there are no payment status API calls available during the settlement process, when you do a reconciliation, if you see that there is extra money coming from certain orders which is not settled to the customer as an order, you need to refund it back to the customer. And yes, this process becomes even more challenging if it is perishable inventory. The previous example which I told you, that if the payment status is obtained after 5 minutes or 6 minutes of time when the inventory is lost, it's even more challenging to communicate to the customer and win back. So yeah, that's about addressing the failed transactions part. So far we spoke about enhancing the experience, avoiding the failed transactions, but can payments help you drive the growth for your platform? If you are a business who is doing a few thousands of transactions, how can payments help for further growth? So a lot of emerging markets in last couple of years, we have seen that the wallets are quite prevalent, and it's a win-win situation for both the e-commerce companies and the wallets, because the wallets want new users. The wallet companies want the cash in the wallets to be used at multiple places. They are looking for more traffic, and you would be one of those channels, or you would be one of the partners who will be providing those network effects for these wallets. And the second thing is that a lot of these wallets run cashbacks in order to attract the customers. So some of your marketing money, some of your promotional money, you can very tactfully share it with these wallet partners. And it's important to keep a couple of things in your mind while evaluating these wallets. One is about what kind of promotions are being run, what kind of network effects these wallets would carry. When I say network effects, is the cashback or is the kind of traction this wallet is creating, is it usable at multiple places? For example, you run an offer with PayPal, let's say, giving 100 rupees cashback in Indian market. Is PayPal being used at multiple places so that customer finds the money as liquid as real cash? Customer finds that cash back really useful. So that's one of the important factors. Then the last one on the experience while evaluating the wallets is that the refund or the chargeback process needs to be quite streamlined. A lot of the wallets concentrate on the payment experience, but when it comes to the post-order experience on processing refunds on time, or processing your promotional cashbacks on time, or having the right fraud detection mechanisms to avoid chargebacks, that also needs to be streamlined, and you need to cover for these risks as well. So that's about selection of the right payment partner or the wallets in the market. So let's talk about how we can control the cost of these payments. Typically, the costs vary between 1.5% to 2.53%, depending on different markets. And if you are a business with high transaction volumes or high ticket size, there's a fair chance that you get to negotiate a lot and you hit a fair price there. But let's understand some of the best practices here. If you are choosing a payment aggregator with hosted solution, which we spoke about, that will save a lot of operational costs for you, because you essentially do not need a bigger engineering team to maintain the entire operations. The second part of it is debit instruments like cards or net banking. They come up with low processing cost compared to your credit instruments. Then the next important thing is that some of your promotional costs, some of of the discounts which you run on your platform, you can share the cost with the payment partners we spoke about. Let's say there is PayPal being launched in the market, they come up with some promotional money, they want to run some cashbacks, so that way you can share your acquisition costs of customers with them. Then the other part is, there are a lot of government or regulatory guidelines in the market in order to promote digitization of money, or in order to promote e-commerce payments. Example, in India, UPI payments are quite popular these days. Anything below 2000 rupees, the cost is quite low. It's almost zero for less than 2000 rupees. So that's quite recommended to be promoted. And as I said earlier, it's, if you are directly integrating with the bank, for example, a HDFC bank card, I process through the HDFC direct bank integration, I save on a lot of interchange costs or a lot of markup fee which I need to pay to the payment gateway. So that's about saving of the costs. The other important part is avoiding chargebacks. So for maintaining the sanity of the entire platform, or in the interest of customers to avoid any frauds on their bank accounts, a lot of regulatory guidelines come in markets which typically say that the chargebacks should not be more than 1.5 to 2%. That's the usual guideline from the payment processors. And what happens is, any chargeback, that is, if a fraudster is coming and compromising on your card and doing a transaction on your behalf, and you go and complain to the bank that something went wrong with my card, then the business or the e-commerce platform is liable to pay back to the customer, and it's a loss for you because you have to pay for the inventory which the fraudster has bought from you, and you have to refund to the customer as well. So I have to pay 100 rupees as business to the inventory guy. Let's say I sell movie tickets, I need to settle that 100 rupees to the movie theater person, and I need to give back that 100 rupees to the end customer as well, because it's a fraud transaction. At the end, it's a double loss for me. So that is one part where it's important to integrate with fraud detection tools in the market. In some geographies, like in India, in Malaysia, there are second factor authentication in order to avoid these frauds. The actual customer gets a one-time password or one-time PIN, so that it can authenticate whether it's a fraudster or the real customer. So that helps a lot in preventing frauds. But in markets like US or in Latin American markets like Peru, Colombia, fraud is quite big there. So it's important to integrate with the market tools for preventing fraud. And till you leverage those fraud detection tools, you can have simple rules based on your own business, depending on the volume of transactions, depending on velocity of transactions. You can have simple fraud checks. For example, let's say you find 10 transactions every minute, and on a particular day, if you see that it's spiked up to 25 transactions in a minute, and one particular product is being bought multiple times, then that is an alarm to be detected, and you want to cancel that transaction proactively, or you want to avoid that transaction being successful. The second example could be that my card got compromised and my billing address belongs to India, but it is being used from, let's say, from a Singapore or Malaysian geography. So that again is a red flag, because the location of the transaction and the billing address are different. So there are some simple rules which can be configured in order to prevent these fraud frauds attempted by a lot of fraudsters. So that's about chargebacks and fraud detection. So yeah, we come to the end of the presentation. I hope you found these few minutes useful, what you spent here, and I'm looking forward to connect with you more. My LinkedIn handle is given here. Please feel free to connect with me. Thank you.